Good morning, everybody. It's another Sunday morning, and down here, and going to go over a few items I've picked up over the past month. But first, I want to revisit a couple of items that I bought previously and give a couple updates on them. Yesterday, I actually went to the fall October 3rd QVEA, which is the Quabog Valley Engineers Association Tractor Show and Swap Meet. And it rained and it was cold and miserable, so almost no one brought tractors for display. A lot of the vendors didn't bother even showing up, and a lot of the vendors that were there when I got there first thing in the morning were keeping their stuff covered. So I ended up having to walk through several times as they brought more stuff out and uncovered more stuff. It started to look like my $5 entry fee was going to be pretty much a waste, because I only bought a couple of little stupid items that I probably normally wouldn't even have bothered with, but felt like I needed to come away with something. And then finally I did score a couple of things that were good, and I'll cover that in an upcoming episode. So anyways, yesterday I bought probably $50 or $60 worth of items total, if that. So let me cover the first little item I want to get back to. So this is item number one. This is a little wedge-shaped thing that I found in either one of the Kennedy toolboxes I bought or some lot of stuff that I bought, and this was just hanging. I think it was in one of the Kennedy toolboxes that I bought. And I remember at the time having absolutely no idea what this was, but thinking, I'll just throw it in one of the drawers with miscellaneous stuff. You know, my first thought was it looked like a knob, but then I looked at it and I was like, well, how would it connect to anything? So that didn't seem to make sense. And I posted this and I showed it pretty closely, I think during the Kennedy box, looking through the box and seeing what was in there for goodies. And nobody commented about what they thought it was, so didn't get any help there. And I thought at some point I might post a photograph of this and other little tidbits that I've come across that I don't know what they are on, like the Practical Machinist forum, and let some experienced guys chime in and tell me what the heck these little tidbits were. But what ended up happening was I ended up finding out by happenstance what this is. So a few months back, I went to that auction, and those of you guys who didn't see the video, I bought a filing cabinet with contents for $5. That was the one and only opening bid for $5. And the reason why I went after it was because on top of the filing cabinet was this Starrett box, which is a jack screw complete quantity 1, an S190 jack screw set. So this is what was in the box. Okay, the little jack screw, a little collar, couple of collars to change the size. This little funny thing right here for holding a. Let's see, this goes like this. So this would make it so you could sit this on top of a round piece of stock, I guess. So I guess you could do that, maybe, I don't know. But anyways, and the little Tommy bar was even in there, and I was like, boy, I wonder if that's a complete set. So I went on the Starrett website, I think, and ended up looking it up to see what was included in the S190 set. And lo and behold, I'm looking at it and I see this thing and I'm like, hey, that's that thing I got. And sure enough, you can see it's the perfect size to lock into there. So this little wedge-shaped doodad right here is part of my Starrett set. So my little jack screw set. So that's nice. See, I'm already feeling better. So I just thought I'd share that with you guys. And obviously, whoever had that Kennedy box had a Starrett jack screw set, and that little piece was left behind. Probably somebody grabbed all the jack screw parts and didn't realize that went with it or whatever. So this is a non-machinist related item that I picked up at a guy was having a garage sale, and guy let me come in on a Friday before the garage sale started to look at his machinist stuff, and I bought a ton of stuff there. And that worked. That was a good buy that day. And one of the items that I spotted on the shelf was this thing, and it just caught my eye because I thought it was really cool looking. I had no idea what the value was, but I liked that it had this centrifugal mechanism on the outside here for speed control, some sort of a governor of some type. And I thought, well, that was really cool. And turns out, and I also like the fact that it said Edison on it. It's an Edison Universal Motor number 5-17907. And then over here, it's got the scripted Thomas A. Edison Ediphone. And what this is this is a motor drive unit for a very early Thomas Edison invention called an Ediphone. And it turns out they're actually pretty rare. So this is going to be something that I'm probably going to end up selling on eBay. And I wanted to see whether or not it worked. And I figured, with all these old frayed wires and everything, obviously the thing to do would be to put 120 volts to it. So I'm not going to run this very long because I'm thinking that maybe the modern AC current that's available, the 120 volts might be a lot more than what this motor was used to seeing back in the day. This motor is very unique also because on the side here there's a switch to switch from AC to DC. So this motor could be run on either AC or DC. And that harkens back to the days when Edison had initially created his light bulb invention, and when he started to wanting to get power to multiple houses so they could light their houses with his fantastic new invention, the light bulb, he was using DC, which later a genius named Nikola Tesla basically blew that all out of the water. And there was actually a whole Edison really resisted the idea of AC, and he wanted to stick with DC. And I don't want to get too bogged down in that, but that's a fascinating bit of history of what's going on there. And AC was far superior because AC could be generated and then transmitted over long distances, where DC, you had to have the generator right in your neighborhood. And basically, Edison's idea was that at the end of every street there'd be a dynamo or something to generate the DC, send it to a few houses, and then you'd have another building with another dynamo. And that was his idea. A DC generator on every corner, so to speak. So anyways, this had to be something that was made by him during a time when there was a transition going on, because why else would you want to be able to run it off of AC or DC? So I've got to switch to AC right now, and let's see, I'm going to put this like this so that when this is spinning it doesn't catch the wires. That goes a lot slower than I thought it would. Now, I don't know whether or not that's normal or what the deal is. I'm going to just run it for a minute. I'm going to shut it off. Well, it's not getting too hot or anything, so that's good. So we've got some kind of a variable resistor here for speed control. So I think what I'm going to do now is maybe try and adjust that and see what happens. Yeah, and it just occurred to me that one side of the line is going directly through this motor circuit and then back through the switch. So if I happen to wire this up so that the hot side of the line is going through the non-switch side, the case of this could end up being hot, and then if I ground myself, I could actually zap myself. So I just made a mistake there, for those of you who caught it. So now I unplugged it, so now it's perfectly safe for me to go monkeying around with touching this stuff. So I'm not quite sure. I thought maybe that turning this would actually be a way to control the speed, but no, it's not hot. That's nothing to do with that. No, what we got is, this is a tap on the outside here that I think has to be moved in or out to change the speed. So I'm going to loosen that clamping screw and then move that sucker up a little bit and see what happens. What if the screwdriver's too big? I guess it's okay. So in other words, we're going to move this up here, which actually looks like that would increase the resistance. So if anything, that's going to slow that down. Yeah, I believe it did. And then of course there's also this spring-loaded mechanism here which controls the distance that this brake is from the disc in here, the centrifugal brake. So this might also have to do with some speed regulation. Oh, obviously can't go in that. Yeah, that's a fine tuning of the speed. So that appears to work. So that's kind of cool. So it's always nicer to be able to sell something on eBay and show that it kind of works. Alright, so about 3 weeks ago I went to the Boys and Girl Scouts local troop yard sale. They typically have yard sale. I think they originally started having one every spring, and they actually did one this fall. And I was really glad because a few years ago I went to one and I got some really good deals on some stuff for the kids and that, you know, toys and that kind of thing, sporting equipment. And the past few years they've had it on Memorial Day weekend, like I think it's either Memorial Day or, yeah, Memorial Day weekend. And the problem is Memorial Day weekend typically, you know, we're camping, so I'm not here. So I've missed the past few years, and then found out they were having this fall one and said, oh great, I'm actually going to be here that weekend. So was able to hit that. And what they do is they open at 9 a.m. But if you get there at 8 a.m. and you pay a $10 fee, you can get in as an early bird. And there was a line of probably about 10 of us there for the early bird thing, and a lot of the people there are dealers, you know, they're pickers and stuff like that. So you know, they obviously know what they're looking for, and they beeline right for a lot of the antiques and everything. So and collectibles. But I knew I was looking for another bicycle, and I had gotten some really good deals on bicycles there in the past. But I also found that if you didn't get there early, there was a couple of guys that would show up, and they would just scoop up like almost all the bikes. And our understanding from talking to some of the guys who worked there is that these guys were actually shipping these bikes back to Africa for like poor people to drive to work or something, or at least that's the story I guess one of them had given. But then I heard from another guy who said no, that these guys come from the city, they get a secondhand store, and that they just bring them up there. Because the way they work things at the Boys and Girls the Boy and Girl Scouts troop yard sale is it's almost like an honor system thing where there's certain things, you know, they've gotten better at it because so many people were taking advantage. So now they're pulling out things that they know have value, that they know like, oh, that's obviously valuable and you should be giving us more money. And they kind of put prices on that stuff. But the bulk of the stuff, it's basically you pick it and then you basically tell them what you're willing to pay. And if they want to say yes or no, it's completely up to them. And they say yes on so much stuff. So people walk out of there with all kinds of great deals. And so what I do is I look for the stuff that I really want and I pay a fair price for it. And then what I'll do is I did this time is I hung around and I waited a while to see if, like, when after 9 o'clock when the regular crowd comes in, if nobody's picking certain items, then the longer it sits there, the longer I feel justified in giving just a lowball offer on this stuff. So, for example, one of the items I can't show you is a cable router table. Actually, it was a Porta-Cable shaper table. It was a model 896, which I think has been replaced by the 898, but basically it's the identical table. It was brand new in the box. The box was open, but all the parts were there. It had never been assembled, and it had a little bit of oxidation on it from sitting around the aluminum table on the underside and the box, electrical box, because it has a built-in switch. Anyways, make a long story short, I talked to the guy who was running the tools area there, and he told me what was in the box. And as the day went on, they sold a Delta table saw, and a few other things here and there. But that darn router table just sat there, and I couldn't believe it. So finally, at the end of the day, I ended up picking that and putting in a pile with a bunch of other stuff that I was taking, and I gave an offer on the whole shebang. So I figure I was into that router table for $10, and I just turned around and flipped that and sold it on Craigslist for $50 a couple weeks ago. So that paid for like most of the other stuff I bought that day. I did pick up a bicycle. I went over to the bicycles, and it was skinny pickings. There was some girls' bicycles. There was one boy's bicycle, BMX style, which is what my other kid wanted. And it was a Diamondback, and it was in great shape, so I got that for $20, and that was probably one of the best deals I got that day. So tools. I got this toolbox. This is like one of the only toolboxes they had there. There's some stuff on the top here. But other than that, this toolbox is in incredibly good shape. And it's got this riveted on data plate, and it's a Park Manufacturing Company of Grant Park, Illinois. I'm not familiar with this toolbox. I had never seen one of these particular ones like this before, and certainly not, if I did, I don't think it had the plate on top, so I didn't recognize it. And then the funny thing was, like last week I was at the used tool store, and he had one of these kind of beat up sitting on his $6 table. But this one is much nicer shape. So it's actually got felt lining in it, which I don't know if that came with that or somebody glued that in there. They even felt lined the drawers, and it's in actually really good shape. There's a little bit of a stain in the corner on this one. I need another toolbox, like a hole in the head, but it's in such great shape, and it's got the drawers and everything. I figured, you know what, I'm gonna pop $5 on that. So that's what I gave for that, and they were fine with that. That might be one of my first giveaway toolboxes for my sons. My plan is, with so many tools, extra tools and everything, my plan is, as the kids get older and they're more competent, I want to maybe put together a toolbox with tools that they can call their own, so that they go out on into life with at least a semblance of an idea of which end of a screwdriver is up. A couple other items I scooped there at the tool section was this is just a plastic organizer box. I gave $1 for. I don't even know what I'm going to use that for yet, but it seemed like it was in pretty, seemed like a pretty nice little storage box for something. This actually says Flambeau Vielchek Corporation, Middlefield, Ohio. That's interesting. That's actually a U.S. made plastic box? Wow. This Rigid, which is a good name, pipe cutter, pretty good size one. Don't know if I'm going to keep that. I don't find myself having a need to cut tubing, especially tubing this large. That's the funny thing. It's like at the tractor show yesterday, guy had a couple of milk crates filled with copper fittings, elbows and all that for plumbing. And we were talking about, Jesus, we got a lot of scrap value sitting there, and he had already weighed them and called in to find out what the scrap value was on it, so he knew what he could let it go for. And we were talking about, well, since the advent of PEX and the widespread use of PEX plumbing pipe in houses, that the copper is pretty much kind of gone by the wayside. Alright, so here in my house, I've got PEX plumbing for the radiant floor. So there's actually a couple of different types of PEX here. This is regular clear PEX. It looks gray because of the dead deoxidant
deoxygenated, the water. The water that's the dead water that's in there, so to speak, in the closed loop heating system kind of gets dark, so it makes it look like that. This is Fosterpex. This has an aluminum shield in it, and that actually helps you be able to bend this and have it stay in its shape, which makes it really easy to work with. So we originally started doing the house with this, and then we found that this was a lot easier to work with, so I went with this. Anyways, and then there's orange PEX. Here's some orange PEX right here, and that's also for HVAC. That actually is supply lines for the radiant floor in the bathroom, master bath, which I never got around to hooking up, believe it or not. And we got kind of a hybrid here. I also have copper, so here's your sweat copper fitting. So this is basically what's going away in houses. Copper is such a expensive commodity now. You know, big problem with people breaking into abandoned houses during the foreclosure fiasco and ripping all the copper pipes out and bringing it to scrap yards to buy drug money, that kind of thing. That's rampant in, you know, all different parts of the country, from what I understand. And then of course there's the other king there is brass. It's the other thing that's bringing, you know, people are tearing that out. But so they go into PEX. They still use copper for a lot of commercial applications, but the problem is, as far as if you're trying to sell used copper fittings, the guys who were doing commercial work, they're buying all brand new fittings from a supply house, because they're not going to go. These guys aren't going to be going to flea markets and picking cheap fittings to, you know, use on a big commercial job. They're going to be buying their fittings because pretty much those leftover fittings that were at the flea market or probably came off of a job or something. You know, these guys are like, well, you know what? The company that's paying us to build this commercial building, they're paying us really big money to put in new copper fittings, and they're paying us for that, so that's what they're going to get. So copper fittings are kind of a tough sell. Most of them end up getting scrapped. Boy, that was kind of a long story just to explain why I might not keep this. I didn't even look at what this is worth, but probably going to end up selling this. Who knows? I've got another big old pipe cutter that was going to go to the scrapyard, and that's going to be featured in one of the Saved from the Scrapper episodes. That'll be coming up probably next month. So I only gave a couple bucks for that. Then I came across this crimper, and it actually seems like it's a pretty well made one. This probably originally came in a box with a bunch of fittings that went with it too. But this has got this ratcheting action on it, which is kind of neat. And this is made by Prestige. So I don't know whether or not, I couldn't find any other markings to indicate whether or not this is US made or what. But I just thought it would be something I might be able to use. And it's got the sizes. It's got replaceable jaws, so apparently you could take these jaws out and then change them to some other jaws for different sizes maybe. But it's got, I can see 0.21, 0.06 it looks like, and then I can't see what that one is, point something. But that might end up being a handy tool to have. This large one over here almost looks like it might even be for coaxial, but nah, that's kind of small now that I look at it. So I think this is actually just an electrical terminal crimping tool. At least that's what I'm going to try and use it for. We just grabbed a ring terminal here. I had laying around. I'm just curious whether or not this would work even. Yeah, it really seriously deformed that, so I'll have to look this up, try and figure out what this was supposed to be for, because I don't think that's it. As far as the tool area goes, one of the other things I picked up, which I was surprised was sitting there in that pile of stuff, because I looked at it and I picked it up and I was like, oh, Mitutoyo, oh, how cool is that? And I said, that can't be its empty case, right? Nope. Pair of Mitutoyo dial calipers that are in excellent shape, and I didn't even notice it at first. but clearly metric. So these are metric Mitutoyo dial calipers. So these will come in handy. So these will be on the keep list, because the previous to buying these, other than one metric micrometer I think I own, the only other way I had to measure anything metric was with the cheapo Pittsburgh digital calipers from Harbor Freight. So now I've got something with a little more accuracy if I do find the rare occasion where I need to measure something metric. So I think I gave $5 for those. I did buy some, like I said, I got the bicycle. I bought a Fisher-Price electric mini bike. I got that for like $2 because it looked like it was pulled out of a barn. It had dirt and hay all over it and was missing the battery, and I knew the batteries were really expensive. But my plan on that is to clean it up, borrow a battery from a friend who has a Power Wheels Humvee just to test it, and if everything works out, I'm going to just sell that, try and sell that dirt cheap to somebody and say, here, you know, show them it works, and say all you got to do is go out and buy the new battery, which is like $70. Oh, and a charger, but I might have a charger for that thing somewhere. I got to check. And then what was the other thing? Oh, and then there was a Craftsman electric lawnmower there that looked very new and very clean. It was donated by the church, and they donated it because it no longer would hold the charge. So I've got the charger and the lawnmower, but it won't hold the charge. I checked online. It turns out it uses 4 battery packs. The battery packs, if you buy them through Sears, are insanely expensive. But I think I'm going to, at some point, I'll probably do a little video where I cover sourcing another source for those battery packs, an aftermarket source, and fixing that thing up. So I think I'm going to cut this episode right here